Something happened last week in Birmingham, England, that really tells the direction that Europe is going, the direction that our country is going, and that the whole world is being set up to accept. It was the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, England, and that is when all of the former colonies of Great Britain send their athletics groups to come together and participate in something that is really a mini Olympic Games. But there was something that happened in the opening exercises that is really telling. They brought out a 30-foot mechanical bull. There were dancers that were around it. The people greeted the bull with singing. There was tremendous ceremonies that were held, and it was an idolatrous event that really tells us where we are in God's prophetic plan. The scripture tells us that in the last days that there will be strong delusion, which means that all the ancient deceptions and the ancient idolatry that brought so much destruction upon the ancient world is going to be repackaged and it's going to be brought back. And the enemy is doing that today, setting up the world for the acceptance of that person that the scripture calls the man of sin and also calls the Antichrist. What happened in Birmingham, England is really telling, because we are living in that time when the adversary is trying to bring back Baal worship. What happened in Birmingham, England was really nothing more than an ancient ceremony that once again looked at the bull as a symbol of all the idolatrous practices and pagan beliefs that are now destroying the world. Society is being destroyed by it, and the cultures are being destroyed by it, and it's invading every factor in every sector of our society. And Baal worship is something that is coming here to America. It's already entrenched in our politics, it's entrenched in the culture, it's entrenched in the educational system, and it's going to get worse. Several months ago, the Spirit of the Lord moved upon me to write something that would notify God's people concerning the threat that we face in these last days. The peril of the end times has become more accentuated because of the upheaval that is going on in our country in every sector of our culture. And we are seeing it to the point to where all of us now are in danger, and there is not one person that is walking in America right now that is not under threat. We're being threatened by an intrusive government. We're being threatened by socialism, communism, and Marxism, and especially globalism. And what is being done is that this thing called wokeism is really repackaged Baal worship. And Baal worship was something that was really devastating in ancient times, and it's devastating today. You remember that 2 years ago, actually more than 3 years, actually almost 3 years ago, there was something that took place where the Arch of Baal was taken around the world. And wherever the Arch of Baal was placed, and all the capitals of the nations of Europe and here in our own nation, it was followed by a tremendous pandemic. And that tells us about the demonic sources that were behind the pandemic. There were other things and other factors to consider, but the spirit of Antichrist was behind the pandemic to bring destruction to multitudes. It had to have an entrance, and that entrance was provided by the Arch of Baal. And now the Commonwealth Games have come out, and they are celebrating the calf again, like it was in ancient Egypt, like it was in Babylon, and like it was in ancient Israel. But God countered Baal worship by raising up the prophet Elijah to contest against the prophets of Baal. He repaired the broken altar of God. He said, "Let the God that answers by fire, let him be God." And we are going to see a manifestation of God's power on his people, on the redeemed, blood-washed church in these last days, that will indeed bring the forces of darkness to a standstill just before Jesus comes. The spirit and the power of Elijah is coming back on a glorious church before the rapture takes place, and that we might experience a final revival and a last day harvest. That's why I'm encouraging you to get this book. There's documentation. All the facts that I have put in this book are documented. You can see it. You can look it up for yourself. You can verify that we are living in that day that the scripture has foretold. And so I want you to get this. Really, I would like to put it in the hand of every believer so that you can get informed and inspired and understand what God is going to do to counter this avalanche of evil and idolatry, to see repackaged Baal worship in our time. So the way that you can get it is go to ElijahFactor.com. That's ElijahFactor.com and order the book, or you can get it by writing to us at Lighthouse Christian Center, Post Office Box 209, Eufaula, Oklahoma 74432. Really, get this book today. You need to be informed, and it will bring you up to date on what the Lord is doing just before Jesus comes. This is Pastor John Parish telling you to look up and lift up your head because redemption is drawing nigh.